When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Welcome to episode 10 of the Premier League Cricket Show. And joining me and Hugh today, how are we doing, Hugh?
How are we doing?
Good to see you again, mate. We've got a club cricketer with what could best be described as pedigree. So he's got more than 13,000 runs, almost 700 catches, more than 300 stumpings. And let's not forget, he has 1 wicket that he took in the final Premier League game of the season back in 2015. All his old teammates will know exactly what we're talking about. And I have to say sorry to Chris Munt, because that's who he bowled on that final day of the season in 2015. Yeah, today we've got Lancashire Cup winning skipper from Northern Cricket Club, James Cole. How are we doing, James?
Yeah, very well, guys. How are we?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad, thanks. Now, I know you've probably got more runs that aren't on play cricket and all that, but we're not going to get into all of that because we're here to chat more about your day job rather than Northern Cricket Club. And your day job is director and senior cricket agent with Cric X. So let me just crack on with a really obvious question for listeners. There's one or two who will know who Cric X are, but there'll be bound to be loads who don't. Can you just tell us a bit about Cric X and its importance around the Premier Leagues in particular?
Yeah, Cric X is obviously the biggest agency, obviously outside of professional cricket in the UK. We deal with a lot of overseas professionals coming into the country. It used to be amateurs in theory. Loads of grade players from Australia and New Zealand that are sort of obviously coming over on ancestral visas and British passports. On the flip side of things, we send over English cricketers in general to go and play cricket in Australia and New Zealand. So yeah, it's 12 months a year really. And obviously there's always cricket going on somewhere in the world, and a really busy time of year, especially now when obviously clubs are making plans for the UK 24 season. So all systems go our end.
So does it actually get a little bit quieter at any point during the year, or you're literally middle of the summer when you've got Northern in some national competition, you're in the middle of WhatsApping someone in Australia for a cricketer for the following year?
Yeah, pretty much. There's probably a week here or two when there's a bit of a crossover that gets a bit quieter, but in general not. We'll find now, obviously in the new year, a lot of the clubs will be thinking, oh, we need to sort out our professional or our overseas player coming over. And obviously a lot of the Aussie grade fellas in particular, they'll sort of go, oh, what am I going to do this winter? So it works out quite well. And obviously January, February and March are obviously our biggest times of year for placements, and then it dies down a little bit, and then obviously it picks up again when the UK season starts, when the English lads want to go over and play in Australia and New Zealand, and the sort of flip over happens then. So yeah, it's going to be a busy few weeks, I think.
And how many players would you place in the English season this year?
I'd imagine this year we're probably, numbers-wise, I think before Christmas, we are ahead of what we've done previously. I think the last 2 months we've broken every record that we've done in previous months of the previous years. So I'd imagine we'll be touching 450 placements, I'd have thought, 450, and ideally up to sort of 500 lads coming over to the UK.
And do you find that clubs that have used you, once they've used you, they never go anywhere else and just keep coming back because they know the service that they're getting from you lot?
You do find that a lot of clubs are very loyal and they'll only go through one agency. Obviously, there are other agencies that do the sort of similar things that we do, but in general, you know which sort of clubs that are going to use your service. And then in turn, obviously, you always like to sort of reward loyalty to an extent. So when those high-end players come in, those clubs that are always loyal to you, for example, probably more likely to get the better standard of player, and sort of, yeah, and that loyalty aspect would definitely be rewarded for them.
And in terms of players that you've brought in, you've been doing this now for quite a few years, because you were doing it before Cric X as well. Just throw some names out there, drop those names into the conversation that you've been dealing with over the years, and you've been able to bring over to the UK, or vice versa, take them back to Aussie and New Zealand.
Well, one random we placed a few years ago up in Newcastle, a lad called Josh Philippe, who came over as a young lad, and he obviously played for Australia as a result. And there's obviously loads of young lads that sort of come through the system that progress quite nicely through. And what what you'll find that some of these lads will be playing grade cricket 1 minute, and then all of a sudden 6 months later they are playing either in the Big Bash or they're playing professionally. I think that's what massively doesn't really happen in the UK. You don't really see lads going from Premier League cricket to professional cricket that quickly. Obviously, you see the lads dip down and play here and there, but very rarely you see lads that aren't in sort of a county system do well for that sort of summer and then be playing for Lancashire or Middlesex or whoever that is. And whereas in Australia, they do seem to get fast tracked quite quickly.
That's really interesting, because we spoke to the guys from the NCCA over the last few weeks, and that's a conversation that we've been having, isn't it, Hugh? And why do you think that is, that it doesn't happen that quickly in this country? Because the appetite's there and the amount of players is there, isn't it? And we know, looking at yourself and your own stats to start with, there's some quality players at Premier League level that we all know should be playing at a higher grade, isn't there?
Yeah, I can't really put a finger on it. Obviously, in Australia, there's a lot less. I haven't played cricket over there. There's a lot less, obviously, professional sports, and there's obviously a clear pathway to go through. And I think as a result, when you see the Premier cricket structure over there and you see the training aspect of it, you're getting 50 or 60 people on a Thursday night training. You're getting the fellas in the 5th grade side training as hard as the lads in the 1st grade side. Whereas over here, most clubs do well to get 15, 20 lads on a Thursday night. Some probably less than that. And it's not got the same all-round camaraderie aspect, I think, of it. Over there, it is very much one club, one culture. Everyone sort of pushes through to a system and works hard, and you just never know where you're at. Whereas, obviously, England, it's just, I don't think the weather helps. It does help rocking up to training, and it's 25 degrees and sunny. And obviously, in various WhatsApp groups in England, it's always, is training on tonight, is training on. So, yeah, I think it's a lot to do with the weather, but obviously, there are a lot of Premier Leagues, there's a lot of counties, so there's a lot of professional cricketers that probably aren't at that level. There's probably equally, I'd say probably a lot of the professional cricketers that aren't in the first team. A lot of them are probably quite similar to the really good minor county players or the top end sort of
Absolutely.
Premier League lads. So in my opinion, there's probably too many professional cricketers in the UK, and there we've obviously, we deal with a lot of the NCCA lads that go over cricket in Australia. I think one of the standouts last year from memory in finals day and stuff like that was Niels Priestley.
No Niels for you?
Yeah. So we've placed him this year to go and playing in club cricket in Melbourne, and he's really excelled over there. But obviously he's a lad that in that sort of structure he's done really well. He's done really well over there, and it's probably a bit baffling how he's not at that next level. He might come back and get back to that level again, and someone might give him a go. But obviously a lad like that is the sort of target market that we sort of see over there. That's first of all available for the full season for Australia. Obviously, clubs like that are going to be really interested in players like that, because there's nothing worse than, we deal with a lot of the county lads as well that want to come over, and they say to us, well, I've got to be back for pre-season at the start of February. And obviously the Australian and New Zealand structure is you play all year, you end up in the top 4, you play finals in March, and whoever wins the finals win things. So there's no point having a pro if he's not going to be there for the business end of the season. Whereas someone like Nils and another lad we placed over there did really well, Ben Seabrook, I think he's playing down in the southwest somewhere now in the UK. They're sort of the real lads who go over there and do really well and excel. And as a result, clubs will turn around to us and say, can we have a player like that? And to get that kind of player is obviously very hard. And obviously you can see these lads as well with obviously the way the visa situations and the overseas professionals availability in the UK. So these lads sort of, you're seeing a lot more English lads, clubs having them as pros instead of potentially bringing over an overseas professional.
I was just going to say, just taking it back sort of from the club's point of view of bringing over the overseas. At my local club, we've had a few overseas, well, we generally have an overseas every season. I'm more in with the junior section, and the juniors love it. They absolutely love it. And bringing that sort of outside influence into a group is absolutely fantastic. So can you just sort of let us know the real benefits, maybe just away from the playing side? Obviously, you've got the huge benefits of putting runs and wickets on the board, but what are the other benefits away from that an overseas brings in? Yeah,
I think obviously the overseas aspect is obviously, I remember when I was growing up, we had a relationship with New South Wales Northern that we used to get the New South Wales Young Player of the Year on a scholarship over every year. I think we had Greg Mail, Phil Jake, Sean Bradstreet. The standard of unbelievable. And that period, I think I was 9 to about 15. So that really was something that I was experienced to. And obviously there's someone you look up to, and from a training aspect, you're getting coached by an unbelievably good cricketer and a person that you're looking up to, an Australian lad coming over, especially at that age. You're sort of rabbit in headlights, aren't you? You're sort of in awe of them. And that probably had a really beneficial effect on my cricket. But I'd imagine a lot of people around me, and obviously similar clubs with the same sort of model, whereas the clubs that are bringing over those professionals and the overseas lads now, that obviously these lads in general will be part of a junior coaching structure, then I can only imagine that I'd have the same impact on these lads coming through. Whereas if you're going to be paying an English pro, for example, I'd imagine most of them would in theory be having a 9 to 5 job in the week, so that might affect contribution toward the coaching side of things, which I think some clubs probably going a bit too far with. So there's obviously going to be a lot of paid English cricketers all over the place, and if you're going to go down that route, which a lot of clubs do successfully, then obviously that probably negates what you're going to get back in the week from a coaching structure with putting back into the kids aspect.
I was at an under-10s game over in Cheshire a couple of years ago, and on a Thursday it was something like that, and the guy behind the bar was the overseas. He was there all day, knocking about, sorting out my Wi-Fi, making me cups of tea, and then he's there. I think he hit 1,000 runs or something. I've forgotten his name. South African lad. I looked his stats up when I got home. So he certainly brought a lot to that team. And like you say, if someone's got a 9 to 5, they're not able to help out in that regard, are they?
Yeah, obviously there isn't a hell of a cost bringing over a top end sort of professional, but I think if you look at obviously one player we brought over was Jake Lehman, who played at Little Lever. I think they obviously won the Bolton League. I think he averaged 100. I think looking at it, you'll know this more than me. I think he was averaging over 100. Little Lever, as far as I'm aware, hadn't won anything for a few years. And from what I can see, obviously they're quite active on social media. You follow a few of the lads, and look like he had a fantastic time off the pitch as well. I'd imagine.
I can't imagine that with the Lehman.
So yeah, I'd imagine he would have those juniors at that club being coached by him in the week, and obviously watching him play on a Saturday and being around him. That can only be massively beneficial.
He must have done something right. He's gone straight into to be captain of South Australia, isn't he? So, they're obviously studying his...
You just can't put a price on it. By all means as well, obviously, they've been very lucky to get a proven quality British passport holding pro, something like that. But there are other ends of the spectrum where you can't guarantee that a sort of pro is going to integrate into that and be the right fit for a club. So there is obviously risks both ways. But the way social media is now, and obviously we're on a Zoom now, like most clubs now are Zooming these lads 2 or 3 times before they come over. They're in WhatsApp groups, they've got references. So, and a lot of the lads have been over before, so you can do a hell of a lot of research, and obviously we do as well, trying to get the best fit for the club alike. But at the end of the day, there's always that element of risk with any sort of deal or any sort of placement you do.
Yeah, I think clubs accept that, don't they? They've all had pros that have worked and some that haven't worked, and that's part of it, and it's not always anybody's fault. It's just sometimes it doesn't click. Our pro that was at our club had a pretty difficult season up in the Northern Prem last year. A couple of seasons before that, he was absolutely flying for us, so it doesn't always work out, does it?
Yeah, I think it must have been about 3 or 4 years. I think I placed a 3rd grade lad with a British passport batter in. I think it was it might have been the East Anglian Premier League. And we placed a 1st grade batter with a great CV over there. And the 3rd grade batter with a British passport did better than the other fella, which is just remarkable. I think one of my my second year in Australia, I was playing for Bentley, I think it was. The standard was probably Div 1 equivalent over here. I think I scored about 120 runs all year. 8 came back, and I think I scored 920 ECB Premier League runs.
Wow.
Really?
In the next summer. So it's just the flip aspect of some things work for you, some things don't. By the way, the training all winter might have been great for me, and then I hit the ground running. But yeah, these things obviously happen.
Just playing over there then. I mean, obviously everyone talks about the pitches and things from a professional level, but obviously it's not quite the same at club level. And there's turf cricket and there's astro cricket, obviously the weather. So obviously the higher standards are obviously turf cricket, but are those sort of pitches, fast, bouncy pitches, does that flow through into club cricket in the same way that it does in the pro game?
No, quite easily. So obviously when I was there, we were in Melbourne, and basically Melbourne is obviously very Aussie rules orientated. Yeah. So outside of Premier cricket, the club cricket aspect, in general, all those grounds are Aussie rules grounds in the winter. Huge boundaries in general, long outfields. The wickets are sort of not prepared to the same level because they're not prepared all year round because someone's running with the studs all over them. So I found the wickets really low and skiddy and sort of horrible, really. I think the wickets are probably a little bit better now, and obviously some of the clubs use dropping wickets. But and obviously if you're on a slowy low wicket with long outfields and big boundaries, you're going to struggle to score. It's just a completely different level of cricket. Obviously, playing a lot of cricket over here, you go over there and you're playing club cricket over there. So you'd have a fielder behind the bowler's arm. Like you'd have a mid off and a long off, and you're just trying to get your head around what fields are being set. But they probably don't understand our cricket when they come over. So it is a flip aspect. But we obviously deal with a lot of AstroTurf clubs in and around Melbourne as well. We probably find the standard of the club stuff and the AstroTurf stuff is very, very similar. But obviously lads don't want to go over and play on AstroTurf. But it's the flip side of being in a good location. And obviously a lot of those clubs with the AstroTurf are financially quite well off. So they will really look after lads with certain benefits of kind. But again, telling a minor county cricketer that if he wants a good deal to play in Melbourne, he's going to have to play in AstroTurf, they can't get their head around it.
Well, I think just from living over there, I mean, particularly if you move away from the cities, I was in the West and I was in rural West quite a lot. A lot of guys have got a lot of space. They've got beautiful houses. Some of them have spare houses just lying about the place. They've all got too many boats and cars than they need because certain things like cars particularly are much cheaper over there. So they're able to offer fantastic accommodation and facilities for guys coming over. Whereas, we're here in rural Derbyshire and it's, properties very expensive. Cars cost a lot to rent. So we can't, putting our pro up is a lot more difficult. Whereas there, I think particularly if you maybe step away from particularly sort of Sydney where it's very expensive, but out in the bush, there's some terrific opportunities to be had for, and the cricket, I assume, certainly the sport that I played over there, that football was a really good standard, very, very competitive.
Yeah, I think one thing we do find is obviously the outside of the main cities, the big country towns have got really strong leagues in Australia. And then benefits of kind, they would get better deals financially potentially and better looked after with cars and standard of living for an extent to go and play out there and in essence better cricket. But it's like over here when an Aussie or a Kiwi sends you a message saying, "Can you help me out playing club cricket in England?" You go, yeah, happy to help. First thing they'll tell you is they want to be playing Premier League cricket in London. And you go in, there's very few opportunities to do that. So the English lads at the same time, when they do the same thing, I want to play in Melbourne, I want to play in Sydney, and I want to play that, and which is great. And obviously we deal with a lot of those clubs as well. And we do tend to get a lot of those fixes and look after these lads. But again, it is quite hard to do. There's only a limited amount of clubs. And I think the clubs are getting pretty savvy to it now. They realise they don't really have to provide much. On the flip side of being involved in the major cities where the accommodation costs are through the roof, clubs are basically pulling their hand away and saying, well, we can still get a good player here, but we don't really have to provide much.
But one of the benefits, we had an Irish lad came over. He was actually fixing wind turbines. I won't mention his name. And he dropped into our club and he'd been travelling the world putting up wind turbines. And he was with us for about 9 months, and he didn't have a girlfriend. Rural West Aussie town, choices are somewhat limited amongst the sexes, and he rocked up and she sort of said to the lady behind the bar, any single girls around? And she just literally pointed her finger to the right to the girl who was about 2 feet away from him. She's single, and they've been together, I think, ever since.
Yeah, I'd love to know over the years, and I know a few to hand, how many marriages and children, us putting people in contact with clubs, and as a result have ended in. I'd say there's at least 10 that I know off the top of my head. So lads have met their wives and they've had children with people because they've gone to play in a certain place and a certain club and they've ended up there for life. So it's a random thing. I've not received a wedding invitation as of yet.
Disgraceful.
It's interesting you talk about location there, James, because we spoke to Tom Brett a couple of weeks ago about the Northamptonshire League, and they've got a very minimal number of overseas pros coming over to their league, which really surprised me because it's the sort of league that on the train, it's less than an hour outside London. It's that sort of commuter belt distance, isn't it? Even those sort of leagues can be difficult to sell for you then.
Yeah, I've had 3 conversations this morning on the phone with overseas lads wanting to come over, and all 3 of them really pushed London. So obviously our aspect is we need to open their eyes to other locations of the thing that goes with it as well. So we always tell lads, if you're not going to do London, are you open to being in and around major cities? And in general, when you speak to them on the phone or a Zoom or something like that, they open their eyes a bit more. They realise what the sort of benefits are to that. So yeah, it can be a hard sell. And sometimes these lads are happy to run the risk of not coming over at all on the basis that they won't change their criteria, which some of them do at the last minute and some of them don't. But we can only advise lads to the best of our ability. And obviously we want to make sure the club's happy and the players happy, because as a result, people are going to introduce us to more people and the club's going to use us again. The players are going to introduce us to their mates, which happens quite a lot of the time. So we've got to I sort of try and treat each placement like it's me being a captain, bringing a lad over. And to an extent, so you want to sort of put your own sort of time into making sure that you think it'd be the right fit. And obviously you can't get it right all the time, but you can try to do it right most of the time.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting with that is we know up here in the Northern Hemisphere, we know that if you go down to Australia, you could be going 500k outside of Perth to some actually quite strong league, and it's really rural.
Kalgoorlie, I think it's called.
Kalgoorlie on the west. Yeah.
There you go.
There's 6 A's outside of Perth, and there's 4 teams in that league, and all 4 of them every year tell us they've got this budget, they want this and that, and they still can't understand every time when we're telling them how hard it is to get lads there to go there, because they look at it on a map and go, oh, but these clubs don't understand that. So that's what we're sort of trying to alleviate.
And the reverse of that is for the Aussies coming over to the UK. We want London. You're in just outside Liverpool there right now. It's what, 280k from London. It's half the distance, and you're almost halfway up the country, aren't you? Literally. So
yeah, 2 hours on a train.
Exactly, and it's getting that understanding across, isn't it? So they know that you want to be in London, but actually, if you're playing in let me just pick an example, the Birmingham Premier League, or you're playing in the West of England Premier League, you're actually an hour and a half from London on the train. You're playing on a Saturday, you're training on a Tuesday night or a Thursday night. If you want to bugger off into London during the week, you can do that, can't you?
Yeah, again, obviously, the flip side of it is, as we talked about before, the clubs, in theory, want these lads around in the week. So it is quite hard to get, like we always tell lads, like you can always get there for a few days every month or whatever it is. The aspect of London, I think obviously London has got a massive Australian, New Zealand culture and loads of people from there. So I'd imagine a lot of these lads are saying this because they've got mates outside of cricket that are going to be there as well, which I do understand, but there's only so many clubs in London. And a lot of them have got rules over having one overseas per club, not per team. So obviously in our league, we've got 5 teams at Northern on a Saturday. We could, in theory, have 5 Aussie lads in each side. Obviously, there'd have to be a certain standard, because obviously our league would stop that if it's exceeding it too much.
If Jake Lehman rocked up to paying the fifths.
Yeah, I think there's actually a rule in our league. If you played first class cricket in the last certain amount of time, I don't think you can play a certain second team cricket or whatever it is. As our league is, I think every league is, isn't it? There's always a blueprint of subject to management committee rules. So obviously you've got to be flexible. Rules are rules, but common sense has sort of got to prevail at the end of the day.
And I'm guessing that's one of your specialities at Cric X, and knowing all the rules from all the different leagues and what you can do.
I'd like to think so, but obviously, I'm still amazed by certain rules in certain leagues. So it's just some leagues are stuck in the dark ages. Some are very forward thinking. It is hard to keep up, but in general, most rules are the same for virtually every league. Obviously, it'd be a lot easier if the ECB leagues had exactly the same rules, but they've still not. They're leaving it to the leagues to decide most of it still, but it'd just be a lot easier. Just open and shut case. This is the rules over overseas players, or these are the rules for this or that. And obviously it varies because every league plays a different format, where obviously time cricket, and obviously most of the leagues now are sort of playing overs cricket. So there's a massive change already. And
you talk about forward thinking league. Who do you deal with? Who you think the clubs there and the leagues are really forward thinking, just out of interest?
Question, really. I've not really seen much of the league, but it looks like, is it the East Anglian League where Jake
Weatherald is going to rock up at Great Witchingham?
Sawston
and Baberham. Yeah.
Obviously, you look at obviously they've got good social media, and a lot of them there, and they're obviously playing a combination of red ball cricket, one day cricket. And so I think obviously it seems that is the sort of way it is sort of going potentially, and I think everyone's up for forward thinking ideas that sort of make everyone sort of happy. Obviously, and you've got a younger generation. Obviously, I'm on the sort of wrong side of that generation. I've been brought up playing time cricket. I love time cricket. We're quite lucky that we've been successful on a Sunday, so we can play cup cricket. But some teams obviously don't do a lot of both. So there might be a time that people are open to playing a combination of certain things. I do think probably clubs now are more likely to do that in our league. I think if we had this conversation probably 2-3, maybe pre-COVID, I think it'd be a very shut shop that clubs wouldn't want to change certain things. But I think times have got to change. Obviously, you look at the GMCL now that's come into it. They've got a lot of clubs, and they've got a lot of good clubs. They're obviously going to be a force to be sort of reckoned with. I think they're going to probably tap into maybe certain players in our league. I think the GMCL clubs, we've always been quite lucky that the lads from over there come over and play in the comp because they want to put the hat in the ring to play at a higher level and sort of play professional cricket. I still think we've obviously got the better standard, I think, of cricket. And obviously one thing they can't change initially is the standard of the facilities. So obviously the clubs over this way have got really good facilities, and I think that's always going to be a big pull. But if they get it right, they're going to be a big competition to us. But to be competitive in that league, it looks like you've got to have a hell of a lot of money to compete, and clubs are going to have to make decisions. Can they put the money into the facilities or the players, or a combination of both? The successful teams are going to do both. But it's going to be interesting. We've obviously played a lot of the GMCLC teams. They are good clubs. I think we obviously we beat the champions last year twice. We beat Row Green early. We went to Row Green in the early rounds of the Lancashire Cup, and then we won there, and then we beat him on the area finals there at Bradshaw. So we've obviously quite well against their champions, but you can see what's happening with, you can see a few players from our league that have gone to play in that league. And obviously there's still going to be lads coming over this way, but I think the younger lads are still going to come over and play in the comp for the wickets. But when they maybe get to a stage where they can't be a professional cricketer, or that's run its third, they might return to pastures new, whatever you want to call it. So I know it's going to be interesting. It's obviously, that's why I think our league's going to have to be all over being forward thinking and doing the right things to make sure we are the Premier League in the area.
And I think that's going to be a big thing over the next 5 years, where you look at leagues around the country and what's going to happen. I'd like to think in 10 years' time, you could almost have an ECB Premier League similar to a football Premier League, because the one thing you are restricted by playing in the Liverpool comp is you only ever play within that circle. But as clubs are growing, you end up with 2 or 3 clubs in every Premier League around the country who really should be playing at maybe even another level, couldn't they?
Yeah, there's definitely scope, that sort of thing. It's tradition, isn't it? I know
Exactly.
They're very traditional. They're not, to open that door to something different. It's like a bit like the European Super League footy, isn't it? As soon as you get into that territory, you lose the core of everything of tradition and the years of history at various clubs in the league. I'd be very surprised if something like that happened. But again, you just never know. All it takes is a couple of teams to do it, a couple of the big teams, and you don't want to miss the boat. And yeah, it is very.
It's only the same thing as what's happened with the Bolton League, the Bolton Association, the GM. It's all sort of, it's done that, hasn't it? It's sort of grown between them. They're happening with the Northern Prem, the Lancashire League. It's starting to happen up there with is it the Westmoreland League?
Yeah.
You just start to go, okay, if 3 leagues can become one pyramid, why can't 16 leagues become one? It just starts to open itself up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it'd be interesting, because obviously the aspect of you do run the risk of, if you opened it up to that, how would you structure it? Are you only allowed 3 teams from a certain league that go into that? Or you could end up with 9 Liverpool comp teams in the top 10, or you could end up with 8 GMCL teams in the top 10. And then it affects the teams a little bit below that probably don't want to get involved in that structure. They're probably happy playing in the Liverpool comp Div 1 or Div 2, and they're happy with that structure. They know where they're going to be roughly playing. They know they don't have to go to the side of Manchester, although in our league you might have to go to Colwyn Bay or Lytham. So it does cancel that out, but in general where you're going to be. But again, times change, and all it takes is a couple of forward-thinking people to get in the right people's and clubs' ears, and you never know what can happen.
Well, you say times changing, and you've been at Northern all your life, literally.
Yeah, so my dad played, so I was there from the we didn't have under 11s back when I started. I don't think we started in the under 13s when I was about 7. So I've been there ever since, never played anywhere else.
And you've seen a lot of change in the Liverpool comp and the type of players that come through, the pros that have come through. And I hate to use the M word, and the money that's involved over those years. It's just growing and growing and growing. So there's going to be changes. And that's where I think bringing these overseas pros in is a massive thing for clubs and leagues to find the balance. Because what we don't want in the country, let's be honest, is we don't want the Liverpool comp, as much as I love it, to be 2 or 3 levels above let's just pick a league, the Dorset League, which is a new Prem. You want the Premier League to be a good level all the way around the country, don't we?
Yeah, and obviously our league is very different. So, and you can see now, I don't know why it probably didn't happen before then. When I was growing up, sort of breaking into the first team, it was very much your overseas was either a batter who bowled a bit of seam or a quick bowler, and every sort of side had sort of a minor county sort of player, that sort of thing. And obviously Bootle, notoriously captained by obviously the great late Ian Cobain, had their team full of superstars. So that was always just how it happened in our league. And then as time went on and that sort of filtered out, then you could see clubs getting models coming through the leagues. I think Rainhill were probably one of the first to do it. They obviously Mohammed Qureshi, left arm spinner, and he basically got them out of Division 1 and made them competitive in the Premier League. So they've been in the Premier League for a number of years, and their model has been have a really good subcontinent left arm spinner who can bowl all day and tie you down. And they've added good English lads to that system, so they've made themselves competitive. And other teams have seen that and sort of done it as well. I think Wallasey obviously won the league in 22, I think it was. They had Summit Ruika, who again hit Ruika and Qureshi, the best 2 pros I've seen in the league, because they've got the capability to bowl 27 overs for 2 and over and bowl a side out, and they can bat. So if you're a young lad coming into that system, which which is the only downfall I can see of it. You're trying to bring a lad up from the second team to go and fight for themselves and try and become a first team cricketer. If you're playing against a left arm spinner that can get first class players out at the drop of a hat, it's so hard for them to develop in that sort of environment. Like we've had Tom Sefton for a number of years. He's probably the reason why we don't get an Indian or a Sri Lankan or a Pakistani left arm spinner, because we've been really lucky. He's been fantastic.
He's gone on and on and on.
I've heard in the past you've talked about his numbers, and I think he's only 31 still. He's unbelievable, but we're quite lucky we've not had to do that. But we're probably as guilty as anyone. We've bowled him from one end in some scenarios, and it's just so hard for these young lads to be able to score runs in that environment. As in, if there's obviously 5 bowlers and you're playing cup cricket, where the weak link is, and you're always going to be able to score. But Qureshi, for example, when you played at Rain Hill away, you can't physically score unless you're a left-hander, which again, the left-handers score all the runs. We've obviously got Tyler, who scored a hell of a lot of runs, but being a left-hander against left-arm spin is just a massive difference. Yeah. But to play the club cricket aspect of it, if you're playing cup cricket on a Saturday and you've got 5 or 6 bowlers, you know that those 5 or 6 bowlers aren't going to be pro standards. So it's just completely different.
It's changed massively over the years, hasn't it? And I think one of the other things that I know you're very passionate about is that the Sunday games, the national competitions. Northern have done a great job in them over the years. You've taken yourself a long way down the road in the national competitions. Do you find that with Cric X that you've got clubs now talking about, well, we want a player who can play on a Saturday, a time game, but he also has got to do a T20. He's got to do they talk about that?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's very few clubs. Well, I think obviously us and Ormskirk have notoriously gone quite deep in national competitions and been to finals and stuff like that. I don't think, speaking to a lot of the clubs, like a lot of them don't base their seasons on the national competitions. Whereas one of the reasons why I'm still 38 now, one of the reasons I'm still playing cricket is because I want to win Lancashire Cups, national knockouts, and I've still got that scratch to itch. Whereas a lot of clubs don't think like a lot of clubs, the bread and butters, they want to do well in the league and they want to do that, which is great, and we're still like that as well. But yeah, there's not many clubs that want the Sunday cricket. I don't think. Some of the lads, we're quite lucky the fact that the lads want to play at Northern because they see the heritage of being successful on a Sunday, and we can get these lads because they want to develop the cricket, and they can see potentially if they do well in certain scenarios they might get looked at. We've got a young left-arm spinner who's Dan Wilson, who came from Longridge. He bowled with Tom Sefton last year, and we lost the last finals day at Denby, and he was absolutely fantastic. He was the best bowler on the day. But that sort of scenario, people were asking me about him after, and like counties in theory would look at lads like that, and we've obviously got lads in our league who play county cricket who still have the ear to the ground and do recommend these sort of players to sort of the counties. But doing well in that sort of environment, or a national game, or a Lancashire Cup final or semi-final, they're big games of cricket, and they're, in my eyes, as good as second team county cricket at times. It's
Absolutely.
If you're performing there, you can do it at that level, which is some of the lads that we've got. I'm sort of dumbfounded how they've not played sort of the next level up.
Yeah, definitely. I was lucky enough. I think was it San Diego beat you at Denby?
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to commentate on the final between San Diego and Wimbledon in that competition at Derbyshire. And you're right, that's as good as second team cricket anywhere. The quality of what was on that pitch that day, there was a couple of the lads missing. Jack Boyle, who plays for Wimbledon, had left and gone back home. But it's a real top quality of cricket. I always fear that there's too many players at that level being missed out. And I'm not going to say there's a level of mediocrity in second team cricket at county level, but they do mix and match the players a hell of a lot because they can't seem to find that right one. And I'm sure if they dip down into the Liverpool comp, into the Thurlow non-East Anglian League, they're going to find someone, aren't they?
Yeah, obviously that day was ready to spoil, but we sort of defended a low score. We'd won the game, and then randomly some fella came in, and Dan Wielden, I think it was, and I think he took 28 overs. Yeah, we sort of got it a bit wrong. We didn't score enough runs, but like so throughout that sort of competition, obviously Tyler's runs speak for himself in the Liverpool comp. He sort of had a poor middle part of the season, I think it was, and it was a bit of rain knocking around. So if he kept that momentum and there wasn't rain, he would have broken the league record, I think. And obviously Liam Gray's probably as good a all-round cricketer outside of professional cricket. Sefton, I still don't understand why no one's looked at him.
No, mate.
It's very, and you see these lads, you play against them in these national competitions, but then you see these lads playing second team cricket, and you're going, they're well better. But obviously I get the age aspect and everything that goes with it, but some of these lads, I was sort of, when I came through the system, I'm not saying I was good enough to be a professional cricketer, but I was sort of the year or two before the academies came into it, and like you see as a result of what these lads get now. I didn't get coached when I played for Lancashire from under 11s to under 19s, I didn't get coached on my wicket keeping at any point. Yeah, so I think we won the 17s and 19s championship, no wicket keeping coaching from memory, which I went and did, keeping with the sort of young keepers coming through, but there was none of that then. And you know, some lads prosper in that environment, some lads just hit a certain level, but some of these lads you see playing club cricket, even when they're past the age of, it seems like when they get to 2021, they've made a decision on them, they move them on. But some of these lads, if they got the opportunity to give up their full-time jobs and got a county contract and had 2 years to get in the gym, train hard and do that, I'd be pretty surprised if some of them didn't excel and be better than a lot of the lads that have played for a number of years. But I'm not qualified to tell.
Sounds like a conversation we've had quite a lot, Hugh.
Well, the one that's got me recently was the England under-19 squad, and the squad that announced it. And again, I don't want to criticise or pass judgment because I don't, I've never seen these guys play. But from a statistics point of view, there were some wonderful young cricketers playing Premier League cricket who were not picked, and there were under-19s picked who had also played some Premier League cricket who were nowhere near as good statistics wise as the guys that weren't picked. I was scratching my head at that. And obviously they're picking it on site. They've looked at these guys. I think they're looking at schools cricket. They're looking at age group cricket. But surely Premier League cricket, if you've got an under 18 lad playing Premier League cricket and averaging 60, that's somebody who's a talented player and maybe deserves to be on an under 19s tour.
I think one of the things, obviously, keeping wicket for a number of years in the tour comp in particular, we've seen a lot of county age group lads, county twos lads, professionals, and obviously county first class cricketers come back and play club cricket. And I've probably I've kept wicket to probably 3 fellas. One of them's probably been the only English one. And I've just thought, this lad's got so much time. He's so good. I think he was 18, 19 at the time. And he just wasn't in any doubt. I don't think he scored that many runs that day, but I just thought I might as well sit down. And it was Josh Bohannon.
Okay.
And then probably took him 2 or 3 more years. So then you started seeing the sort of results of that. But I just remember at the time I was at Ormskirk. It's a lively wicket. It's got a bit in it for everyone. It's like Northern's quite flat and a better batting wicket. But I was sat at Ormskirk keeping to him and he just made it look so easy. Ever since then, you sort of keep an eye on him. And then obviously he's just gone through the roof. He's just a machine. He's probably very unlucky not to maybe have got a England call up. But I'm sure if he continues doing what he's doing, he sort of won't be far away. But he's noticed to be someone that you could just sit behind at a certain age and you just see how good he is. And then obviously that is proof in the pudding down the line how his numbers in county cricket.
Tell us then, James, you're obviously week in, week out, you're playing with the top players around the Liverpool comp when the season starts. You've got first-hand experience of watching the bowlers, seeing the guys bat, seeing the keepers, how they feel the full work. How does Cric X work in terms of, I'm going to use the word scouting, for other potential English players around the country in the 32 Premier Leagues who maybe haven't thought of that Australia-New Zealand gig, or that disappearing off to might be the American T20, we'll never know in the future. How do you go about that?
Sort of probably not really tapped into as it should be, really. Like, obviously we've got quite a few links with various counties, and see we sort of Will Williams came out to play club cricket over here, and as a result we got him in at Lancashire, and obviously the rest is sort of history there. So we have got that sort of dynamic to get these lads with the British passports and stuff like that into the county system. But again, a lot of these young lads, for example, that don't make the grade at Lancashire, however, then a lot of the counties outside of it, I know Derbyshire, the second team coach is Chris Heighton. So obviously Chris is a Lancashire fella, so he's had Tyler down there playing there, so he obviously has got his eyes on the ball. Where obviously Lancashire's a big county, you look at it and you could have a very good Lancashire side playing outside of Lancashire, like obviously Steve Mullaney, Keith Barker, lads like that. So they probably don't need our guidance as much, but we'd obviously, like, I personally would advise them accordingly if asked, but it's not really my place to at the moment to go and push lads to do that. I can advise lads there's opportunities outside of Lancashire. We can get on the phone to a second team coach, or we can give them opportunities to go and play in Australia to prove themselves and put them in front of the right people. But there's a lot of pushy parents and pushy people behind the scenes that contact these people directly and badgering counties and doing that. So these counties are probably less receptive of listening to people. Yeah, it'd be nice to be asked to advise on certain things, but again, people are making their own sort of decisions.
So I'm going to pick a name out that might be familiar to you, because I think you guys placed in. Monty Panesar is going to be playing playing down in the East Anglian League for Great Witchingham, and he's going to be playing with Jake Weatherald this season coming forward. Monty picks the phone up to you on a Monday, and he's played at the weekend. He's been battered around the place by some 18-year-old kid from Sawston. What's your next step then? Do you wait for the contact from them, or would you positively give them that kid a shout?
It varies, and it's obviously it's strange times, isn't it? People don't want to contact people if they're struggling with stuff or doing well, or like people are very much in the shell, aren't they? You see it with lads performing to a certain level, like they are very out and about and very vocal of it, but when a lad's struggling, it's where do they sort of turn to, really? And obviously I think it's quite important to have that support mechanism around them to an extent. We've obviously talked as a company, we've talked over doing certain things, and one thing that's obviously come across them, it's Opening Up, who are sort of the mental health charity based in through Mark Boynes, who's based at Sefton Cricket Club. And I think we've probably got a sort of duty of care, because obviously we're dealing with a lot of cricketers that are sort of away from home, and they need that support mechanism. And if they're struggling or with the performances or their sort of mental health or something like that, then they need someone to be able to talk to. And from experience, I know when I was overseas, if you're struggling at all, you're not scoring any runs, or you're missing people back home, you're not going to tell the club that. You're not going to tell your family back home. You're not going to tell your mates at the cricket club. So you're probably keeping it all in internally, and as a result, that probably doesn't help your sort of performances and you sort of to get the best out of yourself. So I think we've got obviously a duty of care, and obviously as a captain, you've sort of got a duty of care to obviously the lads in your team and the lads that you obviously deal with as clients as well. So you've obviously got to be trying to support them, because at the end of the day, you want people to be in the best sort of mentality, because in general, when they've got the best mentality and they're happy, they're going to perform better.
I always think with cricket, it's like us doing our day job every day. At the end of the day, someone's publishing, right, he sat on his ass for 20 minutes and had a cup of tea. He didn't get his report finished on time, and it's published, and then you've got a load of fans or whoever studying your work, and that's what it's like being a cricketer. You've got all these people judging you every single day, and if that doesn't go well, that weight that comes down on you, it must be horrendous. And obviously, and then there's the flip side, when it's good, everyone can see, he's playing really well. It's a tough thing to deal with,
especially when in theory you're the overseas pro or the English lad in Australia, and everyone's expecting, the first thing they ask is, how many did the Aussie get? How many did the English? How many did the Pommy get? And obviously, if you've got 0, 10, 15, 20 one week, and then you've not scored a 50 all year, which I actually I think my 110 runs were averaged at about 12, then it does play on your mind, and it's not a positive environment to sort of play in. And then obviously your shackles come off. As we know in cricket, we're all old enough to realise you're never far from a score or something like that. But when you're not scoring runs, it feels like you're never going to score.
Just on the sort of the players that maybe you're looking to take over. I mean, we've talked about county lads and county age group lads and second team players, but also there's a level of cricketer below that. The lads that maybe didn't quite make it. At 16, they dropped at county at 16 or 15 or whatever. But I think there's still chances for them to go abroad. You don't have necessarily to be playing at the very top level to go to Australia to play cricket. If you're still playing Premier League, Div 1, even Div 2 cricket, are there opportunities for those kind of players?
Oh yeah, 100%. They're probably, in essence, they're probably the mass volume that we play, so probably around that level, because the lads basically no work commitments, just finish school, just finish uni, go over there, get looked after by a club. Clubs can help with accommodation, work, and obviously the standard of the player. If you're at a bit of a lower level, you might have to finance it a bit more yourself. We deal with lads that play second team cricket in England, as in club cricket. We deal with lads that just go over basically a gap year. So from a social, we've probably got 3 or 4 clubs in Melbourne in particular. We've got clubs, there's no real overseas rules over there for some of them. So we've got certain clubs that take 6 or 7 lads. So we send groups of mates over. I think one club has got a group of 4 mates. They've got 7 players from us. They've got 4 mates and another group of 3 mates. So they're all in a house somewhere in Melbourne. So
that house is going to be a disaster, isn't it? I mean, but what a wonderful opportunity for people.
But yeah, we deal with all of them. Yeah. So again, it is what you do find is these lads, they love it that much. They go back the next year, they meet the missus, they do what they want, they go and play cricket. And as a result, there's 4 lads at that club already this year who are coming over to play in the UK because of the introduction through, how do you do this? Yeah. Like, I got sick of people asking me to help when I was over there. Hence why I started my own business to do it. And then sort of made a business of it, and then sort of obviously went to work for Cric X as a result. But it's just a life-changing experience, and you get put in touch with, I've still got lifelong friends in Melbourne that you still speak to now. So, and I'm sure there's hundreds and thousands of people in the same boat as I am.
But it's a very safe sort of experience for people. Obviously traveling the world is not always the most straightforward thing, but actually doing something like that, you are getting one of the great benefits of traveling whilst also dropping into an incredibly safe and welcoming environment. The sports club club, and even your opposition teams, you just looked after, aren't you? And people, particularly, my experience going out to Australia, everybody there is so welcoming of you coming in. They just want to be your mate. They'll feed you, they'll put you up, they'll do everything they can to help you out, and it's just a lovely experience for any young lads going over there to start there, sort of to move away from school into sort of working life. It's a great experience.
Again, it's a box that needs to be ticked, in my opinion. It makes you grow up. It makes you do certain things. It gives you life experiences that you can't put a real value on. Going away from home, when you get off that plane, or when you leave the airport and you're saying goodbye to your mum and dad, and you get off that plane in Melbourne or Sydney or wherever it is, and there's a fella that you don't know picking you up at the other side of the barrier with a name thing on. You're just all by yourself, but very quickly you realise that the club you've just left in England and the family have got the same one club you've just landed with. So anything, you get looked after more, and you get invited for dinners, you get invited for barbecues, and you end up part of the family. Like, I spent 5 Christmas days in Melbourne, and you're treated like a king. It's an unbelievable experience, and something that is essential.
I think, James, that's right both ways round. Most overseas professionals who come here are treated like kings as well, because let's be honest, it's not like they've just come on an hour-long flight. Most of them have come on a 21, 24-hour flight. They can't just nip home, can they, if they feel a bit homesick? So you've got to make them feel welcome, whether it's an Englishman playing in Australia or vice versa.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've obviously, Northern, for example, we've not really gone down the overseas route for a few years, and then we got an Aussie lad over, Alex Vincent, last year from Tasmania, came over with his missus.
Mm-hmm.
He plays first grade cricket over there. We probably didn't know what to expect. We knew he was going to be a decent cricketer. I think he scored 1,000 runs at 50 wickets, and he's coming back this year with his missus again. She played a bit of cricket in the men's side. Like, he was unbelievable. They were unbelievable off the pitch as a group. They added so much, as we talked about before, to the coach, the helping out with the kids. If you need someone there to open up the clubhouse or anything like that, they were just absolutely fantastic. And as a result, they're coming back, and again, where people this year are moving heaven and earth to sort of help them out as much as they can. Everyone's kept in contact with them on Zoom and stuff like that. But getting the right people, as we've said in any sort of line of work, if you get the right people on the ship, that is a big sort of tick, really. And most of the time, with the powers of social media and Zoom and everything that goes with it, you can sort of vet people to an extent, but you've got to meet them and find out what they're all about, really, before you sort of make that final call on people.
Yeah, definitely. So, we're coming towards the end of our conversation about Cric X, and we'll have a quick chat about Northern. But if we were to sum up what you guys do, I'm going to go back to that, the guys who met their misses overseas, but you are effectively like a matchmaking agency, aren't you, between players, club, leagues around the country and the world?
Yeah, so when you tell someone you're a cricket agent, no one really understands what you mean. So I basically just go down the route now, just trying to explain, just a recruitment consultant, but for cricket. So it's something that's just a very easy and natural sort of way to do things. Like, you're just putting good people in general, in touch with good clubs, and good clubs in touch with good people most of the time, and that goes all around the world. Don't get me wrong, there's some bad clubs and some bad people that you sort of deal with now and then, which is the joy that's just happens in any walk of life. And you can probably count on one hand over, since I've been doing it, how many sort of bad experiences a club or a player would get. But you're always going to get that. But the risk for the reward aspect for both parties is just astronomical, really, and something that you can't put a value on, I think. And from a club point of view, it's, as we said before, about the overseas pro that sort of you reminisce over your childhood. Who knows how many England cricketers or future England cricketers that can sort of inspire, really.
Well, you've still got Grappenhall still going on about Steve Smith, who I think he got homesick and went home without playing a game. But he's still part of.
I didn't know that at all.
It's still part of the folklore there. Just having that little brush that made him, apparently.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember Viv Richards coming to play at Rishton in the Lancashire League. Stories of Shane Warne playing down in Bristol when he first came over. Yeah, the legendary that the people who were around at those times. You're right. They just remember those professionals for generally all the right reasons.
Well, everyone in our league still talks about, because obviously Chester were back in our league back then. Chester had Curtly Ambrose one year, and I think Winston, one of the Benjamins, the year after. People in our club I think there's a couple of scars still knocking around.
Well, I'm getting scared just listening to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about that Northern clubhouse, and you guys call it the Northern Way. What are you looking forward to the Northern Way this season going forward in 2024? Which of those itches are you wanting to scratch, James, the most?
I think you want to win the national knockout, don't you? Don't me on the 20 over one would be nice, but the proper national knockout is the one I've always wanted to sort of, when we've always been to one final, I think a couple of semis, a few quarters, and everything that goes with it. But you don't turn your back on any sort of trophies. If someone tells you now you win the league, then you take that every day of the week. But yeah, we just want to be We think obviously last year we sort of fell away a little bit in the league, and obviously Ormskirk had a fantastic year. But yeah, you want to win the league at the end of the day. But I've always wanted to win the national knockout, and obviously we've been really unlucky walking into Ormskirk a few times in the Lancashire Cups away from home. And we've been to 4 semi-finals now in 5 or 6 years in the Lancashire Cup, and last year was the first one we sort of won and got over the line. But obviously that day last year at Old Trafford, 25 degrees, Liam Gray on a masterclass, Tyler and Chris Laker both got 50s, and then we just fielded and bowled super. It was probably a perfect club performance. I think we'd have beat most county second teams on that day the way we played. But obviously you want to get to those days, and you're playing the big competitions. But you can say you want to win the national, and all it takes is one dodgy Sunday, and you're done and dusted in May, aren't you? So
it takes Dan Wheeldon coming in out of nowhere and blasting you, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, we I think you'd be able to look it up. We actually lost, I think, over a 5 or 6 year period in the national, probably about 8 to 10, 12 years ago. I think we lost we got out the area stages and got out to the national stages quite a lot of times in a row. And I think we lost to the winners, 4 times out of 5. We actually lost to Dan Wheeldon's, like San Diego Town. We lost them away. Yeah. When we had Tom Bailey, we went there on a wet wicket. We had him 10 for 3. Tom Bailey was pulled out by Lancashire the day before the game. So it'd have been a 6-2 out day, and we'd have won that game. And obviously, I think it was a quarter final potentially, but no guarantees to go on any longer. But they won it that year. We'd have definitely, with Tom Bailey, who was probably the best bowler outside of Premier county cricket at that time. So there's loads of little things, and we've had loads of sort of big players got injured just before a game, or there's been loads of things that just affected some of the big games. Yeah. But we feel like we've got a squad now. Obviously, we've kept hold of all our sort of really top end players, and we've added a couple of young lads. We've got a couple of young Lancs Academy batter coming over from Manchester way. The Aussie lads coming back over. So we're hopeful that we'll be sort of competitive on all fronts again. But the Lancashire Cup draw's drawn us against Ormskirk away in the first round.
I was going to comment. And
then obviously our league fixtures came out a couple of days ago, and our last game of the season is Ormskirk at home.
You'll have it sewn up by them.
So it feels like someone's playing funny buggers behind the scenes by the looks of it.
We're going to blame Tom. Should we just blame Tom Evans? Because we blame Tom Evans.
Everyone else does, so yeah, you might as well.
They're microwaving the balls when they pick them out, you see. That's it. They microwave the balls so they know which one's the hot one.
Exactly. Have you seen anyone in the comp making moves in terms of players coming forward for this year?
No, I don't think there is really. I think
been quite quiet.
I think a few clubs, as we said before, a few clubs have lost people to the GMCL. I think obviously Matty McKinnon's been released by Derbyshire, so he, by the looks of it, he's not gone anywhere else. He'd be playing a full season for Lee, which obviously is, if he came over as your overseas professional, he's your perfect professional. He's scored 1,000. So he's going to be it's going to be when you play Lee, it's going to be obviously an important house. So you've got to get him out quickly, otherwise he takes games when obviously he's a good bowler. So Lee will obviously be more competitive with him in the side, but I think they've lost Sam Dorsey, to one of the GMCL sides. See the keeper who broke into the Lancs side. Matthew Hurst, he broke into the Lancs side, so I'd imagine he did really well. So he could be in the mix for playing regularly for Lancashire, so they might not see much of him. Yeah, it's been quite quiet. Really. I've not seen any sort of local signings, so I don't know if people are just struggling to recruit, or obviously you'll find it now with the strength of certain other leagues that maybe the signing could be a bit less key this year, I thought.
Yeah, well, we'll be keeping close contact with Tom Evans through the season in particular, and we'll circle back to yourself to see how things are going on. But before we close off, then just throw us a name that you could see you've got on your Cric X books right now of a player who you'd love to place and you haven't placed yet because you think for whatever reason there must be someone out there that you're thinking, why hasn't somebody had him yet?
He's on the spot now.
Yeah, that's probably not, because the top end players just go quite quickly. So these lads, for example, like you get a lad, especially if you get an Aussie grade player that's got a British passport. I think I had 2 of them come in this morning. They've got 8, 10, 12 offers by the time you've sent a CV out. So these lads you wouldn't have anyone of any note on your books because they'll be signed for someone or very close to signing someone. It's that sort of stage of you can't mess around. You get a lot of clubs that say, "Oh, I've got a meeting next week. I'll revert back." Interested in that player, and when they revert back, you've got to tell them, "Let's sign last week, mate." Sorry.
And that's the classic cricket club committee.
Yeah,
it is. Hey, been great chatting, James. Thanks for giving us a bit more of an insight into Cric X. I mean, you guys are phenomenal on social media, all over the bloody place. We love picking up on what you guys are doing. I'll pinch off my transfer alerts from you guys. It makes it nice and easy. But I think you serve not just a purpose, but with what you're doing in the mental health side with opening up and things like that, you've got a whole system in place for these overseas professionals, whether it's coming from down in the southern hemisphere into here or the other way around as well. I think that's critical. It's great to hear that. So great to chat.
You're just creating lots of opportunity for people, which is wonderful.
Great to chat, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again soon.
My pleasure, guys. No, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, James.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for listening to the Premier League Cricket Show. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes and stay updated on all the latest news, views and discussions from around the Cricket's Premier Leagues. And be sure to follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram at TPL Cricket Show on both. Join the conversation, share your thoughts and connect with us and your fellow Premier League cricket fans. And hey, if you enjoyed the show, why not show us some love? Leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast platform, as it helps other potential listeners to find us when they're searching for cricketing podcasts. Thanks again for being part of the Premier League Cricket Show family, and until next time, have a good one.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.